Welcome to our deep dive into the baths of Caracalla. Today, we're going beyond the typical tourist snapshots and really kind of trying to explore the story behind this ancient Roman marvel. We have an incredible article that we're going to be drawing from today, packed with historical and architectural insights, and I can't wait to unpack it all with you.
Yeah, it's easy to kind of get caught up in the sheer size and scale of the baths. But I think what's even more interesting is how these structures reflect the complexities of Roman society. So we're going to be uncovering a lot more than just bricks and mortar today.
Yeah, I'm all ears. So let's start with the basics. You mentioned that the baths were more than just a place to get clean. So where exactly were they, and how did they fit into the daily life of ancient Romans?
Well, baths of Caracalla were very strategically placed in the south of Rome, close to other iconic landmarks like the Colosseum, the Roman Forum. And this wasn't just a random location. It placed the baths right in the heart of the city's social and political activity.
Ah, so it was a prime piece of real estate even back then. And to think the baths were built on top of an existing Roman villa complex called the Horti Asiniani. And I'm curious, what do we know about this original villa?
Well, the Horti Asiniani belonged to a prominent Roman family, and it's believed to have been quite lavish. So the fact that the baths were later built on this site speaks volumes about the changing landscape of power and ambition in ancient Rome.
Yeah, it's amazing how history layers upon itself like that. Now, the article mentions that the entire bath complex was constructed in a remarkably short time frame, just 5 to 6 years. Considering the scale of this place, that's mind-boggling. How did they manage to build something so colossal so quickly?
Well, that's a testament to the incredible efficiency and organization of Roman engineering. You know, when you consider the lack of modern tools and machinery, the sheer manpower and logistical coordination involved is truly impressive. And it's a common misconception that Romans only had primitive tools. They were actually quite skilled in adapting and innovating building techniques, especially when it came to large-scale projects like this.
Oh, so they were using sophisticated techniques even back then.
Absolutely. Take the aqueducts, for example. They were marvels of engineering, channeling water over long distances with remarkable precision. And the baths of Caracalla, they required a massive and constant water supply. The aqueduct system that fed them had to be incredibly robust.
That makes sense. I can't imagine trying to fill all those pools and baths without a reliable water source. Speaking of scale, let's talk numbers. The article mentions some pretty impressive figures regarding the size of the complex.
Yeah, prepare to be amazed. The baths sprawled over an area of about 25 acres, which is roughly equivalent to 20 American football fields. And it wasn't just about spreading outwards. They built upwards too. The main building itself soared to a height of 145 feet that's taller than a 10-story building.
Those are some serious dimensions, but all those pools and fountains must have required a tremendous amount of water. What can you tell us about the bath's aqueduct system?
Yeah, so the baths relied on two main aqueducts, the Aqua Marcia and the Aqua Antoniana. These aqueducts built miles away, channeled water from natural springs using a system of gravity and carefully engineered slopes. It was a monumental feat of engineering, showcasing the Romans' mastery of hydraulics and their dedication to public works.
It's fascinating to think about the logistics of keeping a place this size operational.
Yeah.
And speaking of logistics, the article mentions that the baths featured a sophisticated heating system called a hypocaust, and that sounds incredibly advanced for ancient Roman technology. What exactly was a hypocaust and how did it work?
Yeah, so imagine a network of tunnels running beneath the entire complex. These tunnels were very carefully constructed to allow hot air generated by furnaces to circulate beneath the floors and even within the walls. And this created a radiant heating system that kept the baths warm even during the colder months.
That's ingenious. But to generate that much hot air, they must have needed a colossal amount of fuel. What did they use to power these furnaces?
They relied primarily on wood, and we're not talking about a few logs here and there. The article states they stored around 2,000 tons of wood beneath the baths, and to keep the place heated and the water warm, they were burning through about 10 tons of wood every single day.
10 tons of wood daily. That's a staggering amount. It really puts into perspective the resources required to maintain a place like this.
Absolutely. The baths of Caracalla weren't just about providing hygiene. They were a statement of Roman wealth power and technological prowess. They wanted to demonstrate their ability to harness nature and create a space of unparalleled luxury and comfort.
So it wasn't just about getting clean, it was about sending a message. Now, I've heard that the baths were much more than just a place to bathe. They were a social hub, a cultural center, even a place for intellectual pursuits. Is that true?
It's absolutely true. In fact, the baths of Caracalla included a public library, and at the time there was only one other library located within a bath complex in the entire Roman Empire. So the inclusion of a library here tells us that the baths weren't just about physical well-being, but also about cultivating the mind.
A library and a bathhouse. I'm dying to know more about that. What kinds of texts were available, and was this library like a quiet space tucked away from the bustle, or was it more integrated into the bathing experience?
That's a great question, and unfortunately the article doesn't delve into specifics about the library's collection or its layout, but it is fascinating to consider, though, isn't it? Were people reading philosophical treatises while lounging in the frigidarium? Or perhaps catching up on the latest scrolls while enjoying a massage?
Yeah, it paints such a vivid picture of Roman life. Okay, so we know the baths had a library, but what other kinds of facilities did they have? Were there specific areas for different social classes?
Well, the article doesn't go into detail about social segregation within the baths, but it does mention a diverse range of facilities that would have appealed to people from all walks of life. Besides the numerous baths with varying temperatures, there was an Olympic-sized swimming pool. Can you imagine? 177 by 75 feet of pure swimming bliss. They also had two fully equipped gymnasiums where people could train in wrestling and boxing.
So it really was a place for everyone, from athletes to scholars, and all of this within a space of incredible grandeur. The article mentions that the hot room or caldarium had a dome that rivaled the Pantheon's dome in size. That's mind-blowing.
Yeah, the Pantheon is one of the most iconic structures in Rome, renowned for its massive dome. And to think that the baths of Caracalla house a space of comparable scale is a testament to the architectural ambition of the Romans. And remember, they accomplished this without the aid of modern engineering software or construction cranes.
Yeah, they were pushing the boundaries of what was possible even by today's standards. It must have been an awe-inspiring sight to behold. But sadly, even the greatest empires fall, and eventually so did the baths of Caracalla, what ultimately led to the decline of this once grand complex.
Well, the article points to a pivotal event in Roman history, the Gothic War in 537 AD. The Goths, under the leadership of King Vitiges, besieged Rome. And during the siege, the main aqueduct that supplied the baths with water was severely damaged, effectively crippling their functionality.
So without water, the baths simply couldn't operate. It seems like such an abrupt end to such a magnificent chapter in Roman history. What happened to the site after it was abandoned? Did it simply fade into obscurity, or was there more to the story?
Ah, that's where the story takes another fascinating turn. Stick with us, because in the next part of our deep dive, we'll explore what happened to the baths of Caracalla after their abandonment and uncover the surprising ways in which their legacy lived on.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the baths of Caracalla. Before we delve into the bath's afterlife, I'm curious about the physical structure itself. Did anything survive the centuries, or are we just left with stories and scattered remnants?
Well, thankfully, the baths of Caracalla weren't completely erased by time. While much of the complex was devastated by an earthquake in 847 AD, some of the main building's walls are still standing. It's a testament to Roman engineering that these structures have endured centuries of neglect and natural disasters.
I can only imagine what it must be like to stand among those towering walls and try to picture the bustling life that once filled those spaces. It's fascinating to think about the layers of history embedded in a place like this.
You know, imagine walking through those same arches and doorways that countless Romans once traversed. It's a tangible link to the past, a way to connect with a civilization that shaped so much of our own world.
Speaking of shaping the world, I'm curious about the architectural legacy of the baths. Did they inspire other buildings, either in ancient Rome or even in more modern times?
Yeah, the baths of Caracalla were certainly trendsetters. Even in ancient Rome, their grandeur and innovative design set a precedent for other bath complexes. The baths of Diocletian, built a little later, were even larger and drew direct inspiration from Caracalla's design.
Wow, even larger. The Romans certainly knew how to think big. But what about more modern examples? Did this ancient Roman bathhouse somehow influence buildings that we might recognize today?
You might be surprised to learn that the baths of Caracalla's influence can be seen in some very famous modern structures. For example, Pennsylvania Station in New York City, which was sadly demolished in 1963, was actually inspired by the baths.
Wait, really? The bustling heart of Penn Station modeled after an ancient Roman bathhouse? I never would have guessed. What aspects of the bath's design did they incorporate into Penn Station?
The architects of Penn Station were particularly impressed by the bath's grand scale and the use of soaring arches and vaulted ceilings. They saw a parallel between the social function of the baths as a gathering place for Romans and the role of a modern train station as a hub of transportation and human interaction.
It's an interesting connection, so they weren't just copying the aesthetics, they were trying to capture the essence of the bath's social significance. Were there any other modern buildings inspired by the baths?
The inspiration didn't stop there. The main halls of both Penn Station and Chicago Union Station, still standing today, also drew from the architectural design of the baths, and across the Atlantic, the Great Hall of St. George's Hall in Liverpool, England, was directly inspired by the architecture of the baths of Caracalla.
It's amazing how these design elements transcended time and geographic boundaries. It speaks to the enduring power of good design, doesn't it? Even after centuries, these ancient Roman concepts still resonate with us. But let's shift gears for a moment and talk about what happened to the baths after their abandonment. The article mentions that the site was used as a quarry. What exactly does that mean?
When the baths fell into disuse, they became a source of readily available building materials. People would scavenge stones, bricks, and marble from the ruins to use in other construction projects.
So pieces of this once great bath complex ended up being incorporated into other structures. That's fascinating. Do we know of any specific buildings that were built using materials from the baths?
The article mentions a couple of notable examples. Some of the materials ended up in the Basilica of Santa Maria in Trastevere, a beautiful church here in Rome. And get this, some of the materials even traveled as far as Pisa and were used in the construction of the famous Pisa Cathedral, home to the Leaning Tower of Pisa.
It's incredible to think that parts of the baths of Caracalla live on in these other iconic structures, almost like a physical echo of their former glory. But the story doesn't end there, does it? What else happened at the site?
Well, during the 16th century, under Pope Paul III, extensive excavations took place at the baths. And this wasn't just about extracting materials. They were also on a quest to uncover the treasures buried beneath the rubble, and they weren't disappointed. They unearthed a vast collection of artifacts, including numerous bronze and marble statues.
I bet those excavations were like uncovering a time capsule. What happened to all the artifacts they found?
This incredible find led to the creation of a museum called the Museo Farnese to display the treasures. Later, the collection was transferred to the National Archaeological Museum in Naples, where it became known as the Farnese Collection.
So even though the baths of Caracalla fell into ruin, they left behind a legacy of incredible art and artifacts that continue to captivate us today. Can you tell us a bit more about the Farnese family and their role in all of this?
The Farnese family was one of the most powerful and influential families in Renaissance Italy. They were patrons of the arts, and their collection included not only artifacts from the baths of Caracalla, but also masterpieces by artists like Michelangelo and Raphael. The Farnese name became synonymous with artistic and cultural patronage during this period.
It sounds like they had an incredible eye for beauty and history. What are some of the most famous pieces in the Farnese collection that originally came from the baths of Caracalla?
Some of these artifacts are among the most celebrated Roman sculptures in existence. The Farnese Hercules, a colossal statue depicting the mythical hero, is a prime example. Then there's the Farnese Bull, a massive sculpture depicting a scene from Greek mythology, and the Farnese Atlas, a statue of the Titan Atlas holding up the celestial sphere. These pieces offer us a glimpse into the artistic sensibilities and mythology that permeated Roman culture.
It's almost like these sculptures are whispering stories from a lost world, stories that transcend time and language. But here's where it gets really interesting. The article suggests that some of these sculptures, like the Farnese Bull, might have actually predated the baths of Caracalla. They believe these pieces might have been part of the original Horti Asiniani villa complex that stood on the site before the baths were built.
That's a fascinating possibility. It adds another layer of intrigue to the story of the baths. These sculptures might have stood as silent witnesses to the transformation of the site from a private villa to a grand public bath complex. They might have even been admired by the very Romans who frequented the baths.
Wow. To think that those sculptures might have been enjoyed by both the elite residents of the Horti Asiniani and later by the thousands of Romans who visited the baths is incredible. It really highlights the interconnectedness of history, doesn't it? But we've talked a lot about the baths' influence on architecture. I'm curious, did they have any impact on Roman society as a whole? Did they change the way Romans thought about hygiene or leisure?
You know, the baths of Caracalla and Roman bathhouses in general weren't simply about hygiene. They played a central role in Roman social and cultural life. They were a place to socialize, to exercise, to engage in intellectual discussions, to see and be seen. They were in many ways a microcosm of Roman society itself.
So by studying the baths, we're not just learning about architecture or engineering, we're gaining insights into the very fabric of Roman life, their values, their priorities, their social interactions.
Precisely. And that's what makes the study of ancient Rome so endlessly fascinating. It offers a window into a civilization that, despite its differences, shares so many fundamental human experiences with our own.
This has been an incredible journey so far. But before we wrap up our deep dive, there's one more aspect of the bath's legacy that I'd like to explore. The article mentions that the baths are still a major tourist attraction today. What can modern-day visitors expect to see and experience when they visit the ruins?
That's a great question, and it's a perfect segue into the final part of our exploration. We'll be discussing the baths of Caracalla as they exist today and how they continue to captivate and inspire visitors from around the world.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the baths of Caracalla. We've covered a lot of ground from the baths' innovative engineering to their social significance and even their influence on modern architecture. But now I'm curious to know what awaits someone who visits the baths today. What's the experience like for a modern-day visitor?
Even in their ruined state, the baths of Caracalla are an awe-inspiring sight. Walking through those towering arches and crumbling walls, you can almost hear the echoes of the past, the laughter of bathers, the splashing of water, the lively debates in the library. It's a powerful experience.
It sounds like a place where history truly comes alive. But if someone's planning a trip to Rome and wants to visit the baths, what should they expect to see? Are there guided tours, or is it more of a self-guided exploration?
The baths are a major tourist destination, so there are plenty of options for visitors. You can join a guided tour led by knowledgeable experts who can provide historical context and architectural insights. Or, if you prefer to explore at your own pace, there are well-marked paths and informative signage throughout the site.
So there's something for everyone, whether you prefer a structured tour or a more independent exploration. And I'm guessing the baths offer more than just a visual experience. Are there any events or exhibitions that bring the history of the baths to life?
Absolutely. The baths are a dynamic space hosting a variety of events throughout the year. There are often temporary art exhibitions that utilize the dramatic backdrop of the ruins. They also host concerts and theatrical performances, which must be incredible to experience in such a historic setting.
It sounds like they found a wonderful way to blend the ancient with the modern, allowing the baths to continue to be a vibrant cultural space. And speaking of blending the old with the new, I heard a rumor that one of the bathtubs from the baths of Caracalla is still in use today. Is that true?
It is true, though, not quite in the way you might imagine. This particular bathtub wasn't salvaged and placed in a museum. Instead, it was taken from the baths and installed in front of the Palazzo Farnese on Piazza Farnese, right in the heart of Rome.
Wait, so this ancient Roman bathtub is just casually sitting in a public square?
While not just sitting there, it's been repurposed as a fountain. Can you picture that a bathtub fit for an emperor, now a decorative fountain in a bustling Roman square?
That's incredible. Talk about a unique blend of ancient history and modern life. It's a reminder that the past is never truly gone. It's woven into the fabric of our present.
It's a perfect symbol, don't you think? An object designed for personal cleansing, now providing a public service, offering refreshment and beauty to the people of Rome. It's almost like a whisper from ancient Rome echoing through the centuries.
This deep dive into the baths of Caracalla has been an amazing journey. We've uncovered fascinating facts about Roman engineering and architecture, explored the social and cultural significance of these grand bath complexes, and even traced their influence on modern structures around the world.
It's a reminder that history is more than just dates and names in a textbook. It's a rich tapestry of human experience, full of innovation, beauty, and enduring lessons that continue to shape our world today.
So the next time you see a bathhouse, or even just a simple bathtub, take a moment to think about the baths of Caracalla and the amazing history they represent. It's a window into a fascinating world that continues to inspire and intrigue us centuries later.
And remember, the baths of Caracalla are just one example of the countless treasures waiting to be discovered. Who knows what other hidden gems from the past are out there, perhaps right under our noses. Happy exploring.